After my divorce, I promised myself I would never build my life around people who could walk away without looking back. Then I met Hannah. She wasn't looking for someone to rescue her. At least that's what she told me. She had a steady job, a small house with an aging roof, and a 12-year-old daughter named Madison who watched every new adult with the suspicion of someone who had already learned disappointment too early. Her biological father, Trevor, wasn't completely absent. In some ways, I almost wished he had been. A man who disappears forever leaves behind certainty. A man who comes back every few months leaves behind hope. And hope can be far more destructive. Trevor had perfected the art of arriving just often enough to look like a father without ever carrying the weight of being one. He'd show up with expensive sneakers, a new phone, concert tickets. Then he'd disappear before school registration, before doctor appointments, before broken appliances, before bills. Always before responsibility. I never tried to replace him. That was never my goal. I simply stepped into every empty space he left behind because someone had to. When Hannah and I married, I understood exactly what I was accepting. Madison wasn't my daughter by blood, but I never wanted that distinction to matter inside our home. A family isn't built through DNA. It's built through consistency. I became the man who was always there. When the water heater burst at 2 in the morning, I cleaned the flooded basement. When Madison caught the flu during finals week, I stayed awake bringing medicine and checking her temperature. When she needed braces, I worked extra weekends without mentioning why. When she wanted to join volleyball, I paid the fees before she even asked whether we could afford them. I never kept score. Love isn't supposed to keep receipts. As Madison grew older, our lives settled into routines that felt almost permanent. Every month I paid the mortgage, the utilities, the groceries, her phone bill, her car insurance once she started driving. Whenever her old Honda needed repairs, I was underneath it on Saturday mornings with grease on my hands instead of spending my weekends relaxing. If she called because the battery had died across town, I went. If she had a flat tire, I went. If she needed gas money before payday, I transferred it without asking questions. Trevor rarely noticed any of this. He wasn't around long enough to notice. Instead, he would reappear every few months with the same familiar performance. "Sorry, I've been busy. I'll make it up to you. We're going to spend more time together now." Madison always believed him. Every single time. She'd spend days talking about the fishing trip they were planning, or the vacation Trevor wanted to take, or the truck he promised he'd help her buy someday. Then weeks passed. Months. Trevor stopped answering calls again. The plans quietly disappeared. And life returned to normal. Our normal. The one where I quietly handled everything while someone else collected the title of father. I told myself it didn't matter. Kids deserve every chance to love their parents, even flawed ones. If Trevor wanted to keep chasing the image of being a dad instead of actually becoming one, that was his choice. Mine was simpler. Show up. Again. And again. And again. Years passed that way. Madison earned her driver's license on a bright spring afternoon. I still remember the excitement in her voice when she called me after passing the test. "I did it!" I left work early to celebrate. That evening we ordered pizza, laughed over her first awkward attempts at parallel parking, and I quietly added her to my insurance policy. The premium wasn't cheap. Neither was her phone plan, or gas, or maintenance. But I never complained. College applications arrived soon afterward, bringing even more expenses. Application fees, campus visits, books she needed before classes even started. I covered what needed covering because that's what I'd always done. Not because anyone demanded it. Because I believed that's what fathers, stepfathers included, were supposed to do. Then something changed. Trevor started showing up more often. Not consistently. Just often enough. He suddenly wanted weekend lunches. Photos together. Social media posts celebrating. "My beautiful daughter. He told stories that made it sound as though he'd been involved every step of the way. People who didn't know us believed him. Sometimes I almost believed him myself. Slowly, I noticed Madison changing. Whenever Trevor was around, she laughed louder. She introduced him proudly. If someone asked about her dad, she meant Trevor. Always Trevor. I became harder to define. Not ignored. Just convenient. The man who handled things. The man who fixed problems. The man who paid. I convinced myself I was imagining it. Until the day I stopped imagining anything at all. I learned that a man can live for years inside a house and still be a guest. Not at first. At first, I thought Madison was simply growing up. College was close, freedom was close, and every young person begins pulling against the hands that raise them. I expected distance. I expected attitude. I even expected a little cruelty, because teenagers sharpen themselves on whoever stands nearest. But this was different. This was Trevor's shadow stretching across my kitchen table. He had begun calling more often, though calling was too generous a word. He sent voice messages full of promises, texts filled with hearts and old photos, little reminders that he existed whenever Madison's life reached a milestone worth claiming. He came to her license ceremony with sunglasses on his head and nothing in his hands, then told everyone how proud he was of his girl. I stood beside Hannah holding the insurance documents I had just paid for. Nobody noticed. That night, Madison posted a picture of herself and Trevor online. Caption: "My dad has always believed in me." Always. That word sat in my chest like a stone. I didn't say anything. I should have. Instead, I swallowed it, like I had swallowed 100 smaller humiliations before it. I told myself love wasn't about credit. I told myself a good man did what was right without applause. That is how fool's excuse being used. The argument happened on a Thursday evening. Rain tapped against the windows, soft and steady, while Hannah stood at the stove pretending not to hear the tension rising behind her. Madison wanted money for a college deposit, a new set of tires, and some trip Trevor had apparently promised to help with but hadn't paid for yet. "Trevor said he'll send it soon," she said. I looked up from the bill spread open in front of me. "When?" She rolled her eyes. "I don't know, Ethan." "Soon. Soon doesn't pay deadlines." Her face tightened, offended by the practical truth of it. "Why do you always have to make everything about money?" I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because money had been the invisible blood in the walls of that house for years, and somehow I was vulgar for noticing it. "I make it about money because I'm the one paying it," I said. Hannah turned slightly, but said nothing. Madison crossed her arms. "You don't have to act like you're some hero." There it was. The contempt beneath the comfort. I kept my voice even. "I'm not acting like anything. I'm asking when your father plans to contribute." "My father?" she snapped. "You mean Trevor?" The way she said his name made it holy. I sat back slowly. "Yes. Trevor. He's trying." 2 words. A shield built out of air. I stared at her, seeing every night I had worked late, every automatic payment, every roadside emergency, every time Trevor had vanished and left me to clean up the disappointment he caused. "He's always trying," I said. "He just never seems to arrive." Madison's eyes flashed. Hannah finally turned from the stove. "Ethan, maybe we should all calm down." Calm. That word people use when the truth has become inconvenient. Madison stepped closer to the table. "You're always judging him." "No," I said. "I'm judging what he does. He's my dad. And I'm the one carrying the responsibilities he leaves behind." The room went silent. Rain kept tapping. The stove hissed. Hannah looked at Madison, then at me, and still she said nothing that mattered. Madison's mouth twisted into something cold, something older than her 18 years. Then she said it. "You're just the guy who pays the bills." No shouting. No tears. No regret. Just a sentence delivered cleanly, like she had finally named what I was. The guy who pays the bills. Not family. Not father. Not even someone worthy of gratitude. A wallet with a pulse. I felt something inside me go still. Not break. Breaking is loud. Breaking has drama. This was quieter than that. This was a door closing at the end of a long hallway. Hannah whispered, "Madison." But it was weak. Too weak. Too late. I looked at my wife, waiting for outrage. Waiting for defense. Waiting for her to stand between her daughter's cruelty and the man who had carried both of them. She looked tired. Embarrassed. Not furious. That hurt more than the sentence. Because Madison had spoken the words, but Hannah's silence notarized them. I folded the bill carefully and placed it on the table. My hands were steady. That surprised me. "All right," I said. Madison blinked, as if she expected anger and didn't know what to do with calm. "All right," she repeated. I nodded. "Yes. All right." Hannah's eyes narrowed with sudden fear. Maybe she knew me well enough to understand that my quiet was more dangerous than shouting. I stood up. The chair legs scraped against the floor, and that small sound felt final. "You're old enough to decide who your father is," I said to Madison. "And tonight you made it clear who I am." Her face shifted, but pride kept it locked in place. "So from now on," I continued, "the man with the title can handle the duties." Madison scoffed. "Whatever that means." "It means tomorrow I remove myself from your car insurance." Her expression changed. Fast. "It means your phone plan gets separated from mine. Your gas money stops. Repairs stop. College extras stop. Anything I paid because I thought I was helping my family stops." Hannah stepped forward. "Ethan, don't do this right now." I turned to her. "I'm not doing anything right now. I'm accepting what your daughter just told me." "Our daughter," Hannah said, suddenly bold. I looked at her for a long moment. "No," I said. "Not when it costs her respect." Madison's lips parted. "You can't just cut me off." I almost smiled, but there was no warmth left in me. "I can't," I said. "I've only been choosing not to." The room seemed smaller then. The walls I had painted, the lights I paid to keep glowing, the floor I had repaired after the dishwasher leaked, all of it looked suddenly unfamiliar. I realized I had mistaken maintenance for belonging. That night, I slept in the guest room. I didn't slam the door. I didn't pace. I didn't drink. I sat on the edge of the bed with my laptop open and reviewed every account that carried Madison's name beneath mine. Insurance. Phone. Streaming. Gas card. Emergency credit card. Small subscriptions she probably forgot existed because I never let them fail. There it was. The truth in numbers. Line after line proving that I had been more father in practice than Trevor had ever been in promise. And line after line waiting to be cut. By morning, I had made my decision. Not out of revenge. Revenge is hot. This was cold. This was correction. If I was only the guy who paid the bills, then the bills would finally learn my absence. The next morning, I left the house before anyone else woke up. There was no dramatic farewell. No slammed doors. No speeches rehearsed in the mirror. Only quiet. I stopped first at my insurance agent's office. We had known each other for years, long enough that he greeted me by name before I even reached his desk. "What can I do for you today, Ethan? I need to remove Madison from my policy." He looked surprised. "Everything all right?" "It will be." He didn't ask another question. Within minutes the paperwork was finished. My signature moved steadily across each page. Every stroke of the pen felt strangely weightless, as though I had been carrying a heavy backpack for years without realizing how badly it had bent my spine. When I walked back outside, the morning air felt different. Colder. Cleaner. Next came the phone company. Madison's line had always been bundled with mine because it saved money. I separated the accounts, and requested that responsibility for her number be transferred to whoever wished to continue paying for it. Then I canceled the fuel card linked to my checking account, the roadside assistance membership, the monthly parking payment near her college. One by one, the invisible threads disappeared. None of those expenses had ever bothered me. What bothered me was discovering they had become expected rather than appreciated. By noon, I was sitting in my truck outside a small diner, staring at my phone. One call remained. Trevor. He answered on the fourth ring. Ethan. His voice carried that familiar confidence of a man who never expected consequences. What do you need? I figured I'd let you know Madison's expenses are yours now. Silence. What? Her insurance. Her phone. Car expenses. Anything I was covering. A nervous laugh escaped him. Come on, man. I'm serious. You can't dump this on me. I can't? You know things are tight. I looked through the windshield at people walking down the sidewalk carrying coffee and groceries, each busy with lives that had nothing to do with mine. For years, I said quietly, things were tight for me too. He didn't answer. I managed. Another silence. Finally he sighed. I'll figure something out. I hope you do. I ended the call before he could offer another promise. Promises were his specialty. Responsibility never had been. When I returned home that evening, Hannah was waiting in the kitchen. You actually did it. Yes. Madison stormed into the room before I could say anything else. They canceled my insurance. I know. I can't drive. I know. My phone account has been separated. I know. Her breathing quickened. You actually went through with it. I met her eyes. You told me exactly who I was. She threw her hands into the air. This is ridiculous. No. It's consequences. For what? For telling the truth as you saw it. Hannah stepped between us. Ethan, she's 18. And old enough to decide who her father is. Madison scoffed. Trevor is my father. Then Trevor can pay father-sized bills. Her face hardened again. You know he doesn't have money. There it was. The sentence she never intended to say aloud. Not he will help. Not he always helps. Only the quiet admission that everyone already knew. I folded my arms. That sounds like a conversation you should have with him. She grabbed her phone immediately. I will. She called. Straight to voicemail. She frowned and tried again. Voicemail. Again. Nothing. She sent a text. Then another. Then a longer message. No response. She stared at the screen as if enough determination could force a reply to appear. It didn't. An hour passed. Still nothing. By dinner she had called 8 times. Trevor remained exactly what he had always been. Unavailable. The following morning brought another surprise. Madison tossed her car keys onto the kitchen counter. I can't drive it. No insurance, Hannah whispered. Madison nodded without looking at either of us. I checked. The realization had begun. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Reality rarely arrives with music. It arrives through small inconveniences that slowly become impossible to ignore. She couldn't drive to work. Couldn't visit friends. Couldn't attend orientation without arranging rides. Every problem pointed toward the same missing person. Trevor. She called again. Nothing. Texted again. Nothing. Days passed. Nothing. The fantasy began collapsing under the weight of ordinary life. Meanwhile, the household grew painfully quiet. No one shouted anymore. There was nothing left to argue about. Facts don't debate. They simply exist. One evening Hannah sat across from me after Madison had gone upstairs. I didn't realize. I looked up from the book in my hands. Realize what? How much you actually handled. I said nothing. She continued anyway. The insurance, the phone, the maintenance, the gas. I guess I stopped noticing because everything always worked. That's usually how support looks. She lowered her eyes. I took it for granted. The words were sincere. They were also late. I know. She rubbed her forehead. I kept hoping Trevor would eventually become dependable. And while you hoped, someone else already was. Tears gathered in her eyes. I never thanked you enough. No. You didn't. Silence settled between us. Not hostile. Just honest. Upstairs, I heard Madison moving around her room. Opening drawers. Closing them again. Walking back and forth. The restless pacing of someone whose world no longer matched the story she had believed. 3 days later, she accepted a part-time job at a grocery store less than 2 miles away because it was close enough to reach without driving. The pay wasn't impressive. Neither were the hours. But for the first time, some of her own bills belonged to her. I watched her leave in the early mornings carrying a lunch she packed herself. She looked tired. Older. Reality has a way of adding years without touching the calendar. Trevor never called back. Not once. Not to explain. Not to apologize. Not even to pretend. His silence finally accomplished what my words never could. It introduced himself. Without excuses. Without promises. Without gifts. Just absence. An absence, I discovered, is impossible to defend forever. For years I had quietly carried the weight of a father while another man enjoyed the title. Now the title stood alone. And everyone could finally see how little it was worth when the bills arrived. 3 months passed before Madison knocked on my office door. Not the quick, distracted knock she used when she wanted something. A careful one. Almost hesitant. I was balancing invoices when I heard it. For a second, I considered pretending I wasn't home. Distance had become peaceful, and I had grown protective of that peace. Then she knocked again, softer this time. Come in. She opened the door slowly. The first thing I noticed was how tired she looked. Not exhausted from one bad day. Changed. The kind of tired that settles into a person's posture after life removes every illusion they were leaning on. She stood there holding 2 cups of coffee. I wasn't sure how you take it anymore. I still take it black. She nodded and handed me one. Neither of us spoke for nearly a minute. The silence wasn't hostile. It simply had too much history inside it. Finally, she looked down at the floor. I've been trying to figure out what to say. I waited. Words matter more when they aren't interrupted. She drew a slow breath. I was wrong. Simple. Unpolished. Real. I know saying that doesn't fix anything. No, I answered quietly. It doesn't. She nodded as though she had expected exactly that. I kept calling Trevor after everything happened. I said nothing. He answered once. That surprised me. He told me he'd help as soon as things got better. She laughed once. It wasn't amusement. It sounded like disappointment finally accepting its own name. That was 7 weeks ago. I looked at her. He still hasn't called back. She shook her head. No. Another silence settled between us. This one felt lighter. Not because the pain was gone. Because neither of us was pretending anymore. I got used to everything just working, she continued. Insurance. Gas. My phone. The car getting fixed. If something broke, somehow it stopped being broken. I smiled sadly. Things don't fix themselves. I know that now. Her voice cracked. I never asked how. Those 6 words reached me more deeply than any dramatic apology could have. Because they were true. She had never asked. Children rarely do when life feels stable. They assume stability simply exists. Until it doesn't. I started working at the grocery store. She said. I know. I've been paying my own phone bill. I know. My insurance is expensive. I know. She managed a small smile. It turns out adulthood sends invoices. It always does. She stared into her coffee. I used to think Trevor loved me more because he always promised exciting things. And now? Now I think promises are cheap. The room became very quiet. Outside, rain tapped gently against the windows, almost identical to the night everything had changed. Funny how storms often return to witness what they started. Madison finally looked directly at me. You never made promises. No. You just showed up. I felt something tighten inside my chest. Not anger. Not relief. Grief. For all the years those simple actions had remained invisible. I should have thanked you. Yes. I should have defended you. Yes. I should never have said you were just the guy who paid the bills. The sentence hung between us one final time. It no longer sounded cruel. Only ashamed. I know. Tears filled her eyes. I'm sorry. This time I believed her. Not because she cried. Because experience had taught her what my words never could. She finally understood the cost of quiet sacrifices. I stood and walked to the window before answering. I forgive you. Behind me, I heard her exhale. But forgiveness isn't the same thing as going backward. She remained silent. I won't be putting your expenses back on my accounts. I wasn't asking. I know. I don't want things to go back. I turned toward her. I want them to be honest. That was the first moment in years I truly saw an adult standing where a teenager had once been. Not perfect. Not finished. Just accountable. She nodded slowly. I think that's fair. I do too. She wiped her eyes and managed another faint smile. I guess respect costs more than I realized. It does. And once it's lost, it takes much longer to rebuild than money ever does. She accepted that without arguing. When she left my office, she paused at the doorway. Thank you? 2 ordinary words. Years late. Still meaningful. After she was gone, I sat alone for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened. People often believe generosity creates loyalty. It doesn't. Sometimes it creates entitlement. Respect cannot be purchased through sacrifices, gifts, or endless patience. It has to exist alongside them. Otherwise, every act of love eventually becomes another unpaid bill. Madison and I slowly rebuilt something over the following months. Not the relationship we once imagined. A different one. Healthier. Built on clearer boundaries. She paid her own expenses. Solved her own emergencies. Asked for advice instead of assuming rescue. And strangely enough, that independence brought us closer than dependency ever had. Trevor remained exactly who he had always been. Occasional messages. Empty promises. Long disappearances. Nothing had changed except that no one expected anything different anymore. As for me, I finally learned the lesson I should have understood years earlier. Being needed is not the same as being valued. One can empty your wallet. The other fills your life. So tell me, was I wrong for stepping away when I realized I was only respected for what I paid? Or would you have done the very same thing?